And the White House insists that Joe Biden is staying in the race after a report in the New York Times suggested that the president had told a key ally he was weighing up whether or not to drop out of the presidential race.
And this comes as the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, has thrown his weight behind Biden, stating America needs to have his back.
Well, meanwhile, the US president previously had blamed jet lag on his poor performance during last week's TV debate against Donald Trump. He said he travelled around the world a couple of times before he took to the stage.
Yeah, now Democrat donors have called on the president to stand aside due to concerns over his cognitive abilities.
Well, Professor of International Politics at the University of Birmingham, Scott Lucas, joins us now. Good to see you this morning, Scott. Do you think we could see Joe Biden step out of the presidential race?
Here's where we are right now. This is the critical 4 days for Biden to establish whether or not he can campaign through November. Tomorrow night, Friday night in the U.S., he has a major primetime TV interview with one of America's leading hosts, George Stephanopoulos. Tomorrow, he has a rally in one swing state, which is Pennsylvania, on Sunday. In Wisconsin. On Sunday, he has a rally in another swing state, which is Pennsylvania. If Biden can make it through that interview and those rallies and instill some confidence, then maybe he stays in the race. But if Biden stumbles in any of those appearances, then I think next week is the critical time when you will see, not publicly, but privately, the pressure build on him to leave gracefully for the sake of America, given the threat of Donald Trump.
And Scott, then, of course, the conversation turns to the runners and riders who may replace Joe Biden. Kamala Harris fancies a chance, and she's, of course, is the vice president, that she'd naturally be the next choice. She's actually polling better with many Americans, particularly women and ethnic minorities. And, of course, as I spoke to you yesterday, I believe, of Michelle Obama, her name has come to the fore, somebody who's seen as, well, a poll yesterday showed she's the only Democrat that could beat Trump in a square head-to-head. Do you think that's unlikely comeback is on the cards?
Michelle Obama has said that she's not getting into politics, and she said that repeatedly. So I think that's speculation we can put to the side. Kamala Harris is not speculation. I think you're seeing voices rallying, again, privately, to say she needs to replace Biden in an orderly transition and a quick transition. And you're quite right to point out that contrary to some American media narratives, she runs neck and neck with Trump in the polling. So it's not that she would, be an inevitable loss in November. What the Democrats have to do very quickly is establish her profile, establish policies, and establish her ability to knock back Trump's lies on a day-to-day basis.
Scott, has this ever happened before at this late stage?
It's happened with vice presidents. So back in 1972, the Democrats went through an absolute nightmare in that they had a couple of vice presidential nominees who had to step aside, Sergeant Shriver and then a man named Thomas Eagleton, who had to for mental health issues. Whether or not this had anything to do with it, that was a landslide victory for the Republican Richard Nixon just a few months later in that election.
Scott, do you think ultimately this would come down to Joe Biden himself, though? I mean, he's admitted, I had a bad night, I screwed up, I made a mistake. But he also said last night, I'm not standing down, I'm in it to win it. If we get to that stage, Scott, what's the process of trying to, forcibly remove Joe Biden from the ticket?
I'm going to say, first of all, as an analogy on UK election day, I remember when Margaret Thatcher said 48 hours before she went that she was going to persist and carry on. So what Biden says now may not be true in a few days. That said, I think he has to move aside voluntarily. If it looks like an overthrow of Biden, then the question comes up is, well, if you're not going to let him be your candidate in November when he wants to stay on, why is he still being the president in these next 4 months?
Fascinating stuff. Scott Lucas, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Give us your expert insight. Appreciate it.